The first thing I saw when I pulled into my driveway wasn't my old porch, the peeling white fence, or the maple tree that had somehow grown taller while I was gone. It was my neighbor dropping an entire basket of freshly folded laundry into the grass, kicking off one sandal without even noticing, and sprinting barefoot across the yard toward me as though 6 months of silence had suddenly become too heavy to carry another second. The look on her face wasn't simple happiness. It was relief, heartbreak, fear, and hope crashing together all at once. Before I even stepped out of my truck completely, I realized something had happened while I was gone, something that had changed both of our lives forever. If you believe kindness has the power to change lives and that everyone deserves a second chance, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone you care about, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps these emotional stories reach more hearts around the world. 6 months earlier I had left my small coastal town for another deployment at sea. Working on a cargo vessel wasn't glamorous, but it paid enough to keep my little house and slowly rebuild the future I'd nearly lost after my divorce. The ocean had become both my workplace and my escape. Out there, surrounded by endless water, it was easier to ignore empty rooms, unanswered questions, and the loneliness waiting back home. Every goodbye became easier because I convinced myself there was nothing important left on land waiting for me. I couldn't have been more wrong. Before leaving, I barely knew my next-door neighbor, Emily. She had moved into the little blue house with her 7-year-old son, Noah, only a few months earlier. We exchanged polite waves while taking out the trash or mowing our lawns. Occasionally I helped carry groceries or fixed a loose gate, but our conversations never lasted long. She always looked exhausted, wearing the tired smile of someone trying to be strong because there was simply no other option. I assumed she was just another single parent doing her best, and I respected the quiet determination I saw every morning before heading to work. The day before my ship departed, I noticed Noah sitting alone on the curb, hugging an old stuffed bear that had clearly seen better days. He wasn't crying, but children have a way of looking sad without shedding a single tear. I sat beside him for a few minutes before heading to the airport, and although our conversation was brief, he admitted he wished people didn't always leave. His father had left years before, his grandmother had recently passed away, and now another adult he had started trusting was disappearing for months. I promised him I'd bring back something from every country we visited. It seemed like a tiny promise, almost meaningless at the time. Yet the way his face brightened made me realize small promises often matter the most. Life at sea followed its familiar rhythm. Endless shifts, roaring engines, sleepless nights during storms, breathtaking sunsets over open water, and birthdays celebrated with instant coffee in metal mugs. Whenever we docked somewhere new, I searched for small souvenirs that could fit inside my duffel bag. A carved turtle from the Philippines. A tiny lighthouse from Portugal. A handmade bracelet from Brazil. None of them were expensive, but each represented a place I'd seen and a promise I intended to keep. Whenever internet service briefly worked, I checked my email. There were almost no personal messages waiting for me except one unexpected surprise. Every few weeks, Emily sent a short update. She never asked for money or favors. She simply wrote that Noah was doing well, that he still talked about the little gifts I had promised, and that he counted the weeks until my return by marking tiny X's on a kitchen calendar. Those emails became something I secretly looked forward to more than I ever admitted. They reminded me that someone back home remembered I existed. Then, halfway through the deployment, the messages suddenly stopped. Days became weeks. Weeks became months. I sent replies whenever I could connect, but nothing came back. I blamed poor internet connections, busy schedules, or broken phones. Still, a quiet worry settled inside me that refused to disappear. There was no way to call from the middle of the ocean, and all I could do was hope everything was fine. When my contract finally ended, I drove home from the port without telling anyone exactly when I'd arrive. I wanted the surprise of walking through my own front door after half a year away. Instead, I found Emily racing across the yard with tears streaming down her face. She reached me before I had even closed my truck door. Her breathing was uneven from running barefoot across gravel, yet she barely seemed to notice the cuts forming on her feet. She wrapped her arms around me with the desperation of someone holding on to the last familiar thing left in the world. I stood frozen for a moment before gently returning the embrace. Sometimes people don't need explanations first. They simply need proof that someone came back. Only after several long moments did I notice how much thinner she looked. Dark circles rested beneath her eyes, and the confident determination I'd always associated with her had been replaced by exhaustion. Her house looked different too. The flowers in the front garden had withered. The porch swing hung crooked. Even the curtains remained closed despite the bright afternoon sun. Inside the house, I learned the truth that no email could have prepared me for. Only weeks after my ship sailed away, Emily had been diagnosed with an aggressive illness that required immediate treatment. She tried hiding it from everyone, believing she could manage alone while protecting Noah from unnecessary fear. Medical bills piled up faster than she could pay them. She lost hours at work, then eventually lost the job itself. Her savings disappeared almost overnight. During chemotherapy sessions, neighbors occasionally watched Noah, but most people eventually returned to their own busy lives. Pride kept her from asking for help until there was almost nothing left. What surprised me most wasn't hearing about her illness. It was learning about Noah. Every evening before bed, he insisted on placing another X on the calendar, counting down until I returned. Whenever his mother became discouraged, he reminded her that I had promised to come back. Whenever treatments became unbearable, he talked about the souvenirs waiting somewhere across the ocean. A child had built hope out of a simple promise spoken months earlier on a quiet curb. That realization broke something open inside me. The following morning, I unpacked my sea bag. One by one, Noah carefully placed every souvenir across the kitchen table as though they were priceless treasures collected from another world. For the first time in months, laughter filled the little blue house. Watching him smile reminded me how little children actually need. They don't measure love by expensive gifts. They remember consistency. They remember who keeps promises. I spent the next several weeks repairing everything I could. I fixed broken steps, mowed overgrown grass, patched leaking pipes, and rebuilt the neglected garden. Friends from town gradually noticed and quietly joined in. One delivered groceries. Another offered free childcare. A retired mechanic repaired Emily's aging car without charging $1. Kindness spread through the neighborhood the way sunlight slowly reaches every corner after a storm. Emily fought through treatment with extraordinary courage, but recovery wasn't quick. There were days she could barely stand. Days she questioned whether Noah would remember her healthy smile or only the tired one illness had created. During those moments, I simply stayed present. Sometimes helping means carrying groceries. Sometimes it means sitting silently beside someone who feels too exhausted to pretend they're okay. Months passed. The seasons changed again. The empty flower beds bloomed brighter than ever before. Noah grew taller and proudly displayed a world map on his bedroom wall, marking every place my ship had visited. Emily's strength slowly returned, not all at once but one determined step after another. The doctors finally delivered the words everyone had prayed to hear. Her treatment had worked. Recovery would continue, but the worst was behind her. Standing in my backyard one quiet evening, I realized something unexpected. I had spent years believing the ocean was where I escaped loneliness. In reality, home had been patiently waiting for me to stop running. Family isn't always created by blood. Sometimes it grows quietly between neighboring houses, shared struggles, and promises that survive impossible distances. The experience changed me forever. I accepted shorter contracts that kept me closer to home. The extra money from long deployments no longer seemed worth missing the ordinary moments that truly mattered. Birthday cakes, school plays, backyard barbecues, and simple evenings watching fireflies with people who genuinely cared about one another became richer than any paycheck I had ever earned. Looking back, I often think about that afternoon when Emily ran barefoot across the yard. Most people would remember the dramatic reunion. I remember something different. I remember realizing that someone had been waiting for me all along. Not because I was wealthy, extraordinary, or capable of solving every problem, but because sometimes the greatest gift you can give another person is simply coming back when you said you would. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who believes in hope, subscribe to the channel for more inspiring stories, and let us know your thoughts in the comments. Your support helps these stories reach people who may need a little light today. Special request: before this story ends, please comment below with the words, "Kindness always comes home," if you believe even the smallest promise can change someone's life. As the sun disappeared behind the trees that evening, Noah carefully hung the little carved turtle from the Philippines beside the front door. It wasn't there as decoration. It became a reminder that no matter how far life takes us, someone may be waiting for our return with more hope than we could ever imagine. We rarely realize how deeply our smallest acts of kindness echo through another person's life until the day those echoes come rushing back across a quiet front yard, barefoot and filled with tears. And in that unforgettable moment, I finally understood that the greatest journeys are never measured by the miles we travel across oceans, but by the hearts we find waiting when we finally come home.